The void of space stretched infinite and cold around the U.S. Prometheus, a vessel that appeared deceptively unremarkable to the untrained eye. Captain Michael Roberts sat in the command chair, his fingers barely brushing the holographic interface that seemed to anticipate his thoughts before they fully formed. Around him, the bridge crew moved with a synchronicity that bordered on the supernatural, each movement precise, each glance meaningful. Lieutenant Alexandra Chen, the ship's tactical officer, broke the tense silence. Zorn battle cruiser entering weapons range. They're not even attempting communication. Her voice carried a hint of dark humor, as if the approaching Imperial ship was walking into a carefully laid trap. Roberts allowed himself a slight smile. The Zorn had a reputation across the galaxy, ancient, technologically advanced, utterly convinced of their superiority. They saw other species as little more than potential slaves or resources to be harvested. Humanity was a recent addition to the galactic stage, a species they had initially dismissed as primitive and inconsequential. They were about to learn differently. Active camouflage at 98% optimization, reported Marcus Williams from the system's console. Quantum adaptive hull is ready for phase transformation. His fingers danced across multiple holographic displays, each movement triggering complex subroutines that would have looked like magic to any outside observer. The Zorn cruiser was massive, a kilometer-long behemoth of dark metallic plating and weapon clusters that could obliterate most ships in seconds. Its targeting systems were already painting the Prometheus with multiple weapon locks, each one a promise of imminent destruction. What the Zorn didn't know was that the Prometheus was anything but a typical human vessel. "They're charging primary plasma cannons," Alexandra announced, her voice calm despite the imminent threat. Estimated time to weapon discharge: 17 seconds. Captain Roberts leaned forward slightly. "Initiate quantum resonance protocol. Let them get a clean shot." The bridge crew exchanged quick glances. To an outside observer, it would have seemed like madness, allowing a Zorn battle cruiser to fire directly at them. Impossible. But impossibility was a concept humanity had been rewriting since they first looked to the stars. The Zorn weapons powered up, a massive energy buildup that would have vaporized any known ship in the galaxy. The Prometheus seemed to shimmer, its hull momentarily becoming translucent, then solidifying with a strange, almost liquid quality. When the plasma burst struck, something extraordinary happened. Instead of destruction, the energy dissipated across the Prometheus's surface in beautiful, almost fractal patterns. The ship didn't just withstand the attack. It absorbed it, transformed it, and prepared to send something back. Quantum energy conversion at 76%, Marcus reported. Weapon systems primed. The Zorn crew must have realized something was wrong. Their massive ship began to rotate, attempting to bring additional weapon systems to bear. But they were already too late. The Prometheus struck with surgical precision. Not with a massive explosion, not with overwhelming firepower, but with a targeted quantum resonance pulse that systematically disabled the Zorn cruiser's critical systems. Weapon clusters went dark. Navigation systems flickered and died. Communication arrays became nothing more than dead metal. In less than 30 seconds, a ship that had been the terror of multiple star systems was now nothing more than a giant, helpless piece of space debris. "Transmission incoming," Alexandra said, a note of professional satisfaction in her voice. "They're attempting emergency communication." Captain Roberts leaned back, his eyes reflecting the disabled Imperial vessel. "Put them through. Let them hear a human voice." The communication channel crackled to life. Roberts spoke clearly, each word measured and deliberate. "This is Captain Michael Roberts of the United Earth Exploration Vessel Prometheus. We are prepared to render humanitarian assistance. Your weapons are disabled. Your systems are neutralized. We suggest you stand down and await further instructions." It was more than a message. It was a statement. A declaration that humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and they would be nobody's victim. The first encounter was complete, and the galaxy would never be the same. The diplomatic vessel descended into Earth's atmosphere like a metallic predator, its sleek Zorn design a stark contrast to the vibrant blue and green planet below. Ambassador Lauren Thompson watched from the secured conference center in Geneva, her fingers tracing the holographic dossiers floating before her. The Zorn delegation was predictable, almost comically so. They would expect submission, negotiate from a position of absolute superiority, and treat humans as a subspecies to be catalogued and controlled. What they didn't understand was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades. Inside the conference room, the Zorn representatives cut imposing figures. Taller than humans by at least a meter, their exoskeletal armor gleamed with intricate biomechanical connections. Ambassador Krelvax, the lead negotiator, had personally subjugated 17 different species during his diplomatic career. His compound eyes scanned the room with a mixture of contempt and curiosity. "Humans," he began, his translator rendering his clicks and chirps into a deep, resonant human voice. "Your recent actions against our Imperial vessel require immediate explanation and subsequent punishment." Lauren Thompson sat perfectly still. She wore a tailored black suit that seemed simple, but was anything but ordinary. Woven with quantum-responsive nanomaterials, the suit could analyze environmental conditions, track biometric data, and even interface with communication systems if needed. "Punishment," she repeated, one eyebrow slightly raised. "I'm afraid you misunderstand the situation." Behind her, a holographic display began to activate. Not a typical presentation, but a meticulously crafted narrative that would systematically deconstruct the Zorn's perception of galactic power. The first image showed the disabled Zorn cruiser, not as a moment of military victory, but as a technological demonstration. Detailed schematics began to appear, revealing how the Prometheus had not just defeated their ship, but had done so with minimal energy expenditure and zero casualties. "Your vessel attempted to engage a human exploration ship using what you considered standard Imperial protocols," Lauren continued. "What you encountered was a deliberate, calculated response designed to communicate a very specific message." Krelvax's translator hummed with what might have been confusion. "And what message would that be?" "That humanity is not a species to be trifled with." A holographic display shifted. Now it showed a comprehensive overview of human technological development over the past 50 years. Quantum computing breakthroughs, adaptive nanotechnology, predictive AI systems that could model complex scenarios with terrifying accuracy. Each slide was a punch, each technological milestone a strategic statement. The Zorn delegation watched, their collective body language shifting from contempt to something approaching concern. Lauren noted every micro-expression, every slight movement. This wasn't just a negotiation. It was psychological warfare. "Your Imperial records suggest that any species encountering your fleet is given two options," she said. "Submission or destruction. We're presenting a third option, mutual respect." A series of images began to cycle. Human research stations, collaborative international projects, technological innovations that solved complex global challenges. Each image carefully selected to demonstrate not just capability, but a fundamentally different approach to progress. Krelvax's translator began to emit a low, unsettling frequency, the Zorn equivalent of a nervous response. "You destroyed an Imperial vessel," he stated. "It wasn't a question." "We disabled a vessel that attempted to engage us with hostile intent," Lauren corrected. "And we did so with minimal damage. Would you like to discuss the specific quantum resonance technologies we employed?" She knew the answer. The Zorn didn't want technical details. They wanted to understand the psychological landscape. And in this arena, humanity was playing a game far more complex than simple military engagement. The presentation continued. Economic projections, technological forecasts, a comprehensive view of humanity that demolished the Zorn's preconceived notions. This wasn't a species begging for survival. This was a species declaring its arrival. "Your Imperial protocols are obsolete," Lauren said finally. "And you know it." The silence that followed was more powerful than any weapon. When the Zorn delegation left Earth that day, they carried with them something far more dangerous than any military intelligence. They carried the understanding that humanity was not just another species to be conquered. Humanity was a force to be reckoned with. New Phoenix Colony looked like nothing special from orbital scans, a seemingly vulnerable settlement nestled on a rocky planet with minimal natural defenses. The Zorn Imperial fleet approached with calculated arrogance, their massive ships casting shadow patterns across the colony's surface. They believed this would be a simple demonstration of their power, a punitive strike to show humanity the consequences of their recent defiance. They were catastrophically wrong. Inside the colony's central command bunker, Chief Engineer Jack Harrison watched the incoming fleet with a predatory smile. His fingers danced across holographic interfaces that seemed to breathe with living intelligence. Every system was connected, every potential vector of attack anticipated and already countered. Incoming fleet composition, announced Lieutenant Rebecca Martinez, her voice calm and clinical. 17 capital ships, 32 support vessels. Estimated time to weapon range, 6 minutes. Harrison nodded. Initiate adaptive camouflage protocol. Let them think they're looking at a standard colonial settlement. To the Zorn sensors, New Phoenix appeared vulnerable, a soft target ripe for conquest. What they couldn't see was the complex network of quantum adaptive defense systems lying dormant beneath the planet's surface. This was no ordinary colony. This was a meticulously designed fortress that redefined the concept of planetary defense. The first wave of Zorn attack craft screamed through the atmosphere, plasma weapons charging. They expected minimal resistance. Instead, they found something entirely unexpected. The planet itself seemed to come alive. Modular defense platforms emerged from underground complexes, their designs shifting and adapting faster than any targeting system could track. Nano-constructed weapon emplacements rose from what moments before had appeared to be simple rock formations. The colony's entire surface was a living, breathing defensive organism. Quantum entanglement communication network at full synchronization. Martins reported. Predictive combat algorithms are online. Each Zorn weapon discharge was met with a counter-response so precise it seemed almost prescient. Plasma bursts were redirected, energy weapons absorbed and transformed, missile trajectories subtly altered by localized gravitational manipulations that shouldn't have been possible. In the command center, Harrison wasn't just defending. He was conducting a symphony of technological warfare. "They're attempting a concentrated strike on the western quadrant," Martinez said. A slight gesture from her hand redirected an entire section of the colony's defensive matrix. What looked like simple rock formations transformed into advanced energy dissipation arrays, turning the Zorn's most powerful weapons into nothing more than harmless light shows. The Imperial fleet commanders would later describe it as fighting a planet that was alive, a sentient organism that anticipated and neutralized every possible attack vector. Swarms of autonomous defense drones emerged, not as traditional weapons, but as adaptive combat units that could reconfigure themselves mid-battle. One moment a drone might be a high-energy weapon platform, the next a communication disruptor, then a self-repairing shield generator. Zorn fleet losing cohesion, Martins announced. There was no excitement in her voice, just clinical observation. Estimated combat effectiveness down 67% in first engagement phase. The battle wasn't about destruction. It was about demonstration. Jack Harrison understood something the Zorn didn't. True technological superiority wasn't about overwhelming force. It was about adaptive intelligence, about turning every potential weakness into a strength. As the battle progressed, the Zorn realized they weren't just fighting a colony. They were fighting a concept, a reimagining of planetary defense that made their millennia of military doctrine look like primitive scribbling. When the first Zorn capital ship began to retreat, its systems systematically neutralized without a single human casualty, Harrison allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. "Transmission ready," Martins said. "Shall I send the standard non-engagement protocol?" Harrison chuckled. "No. Let them run. Let them tell their entire empire what they've just witnessed. The message was clear. Humanity was not a species to be trifled with. They were a civilization that could turn a supposedly vulnerable colony into the most advanced defensive system the galaxy had ever seen. New Phoenix wasn't just a victory. It was a warning. The quantum communication network hummed with unprecedented activity. Intelligence analyst Rachel Morgan watched the data streams cascade across her holographic displays, each pulse of information a testament to the seismic shift happening across known space. In the central hub of the United Earth Intelligence Agency, a massive holographic galaxy map pulsed with real-time information. Red markers, representing Zorn Imperial communication nodes, were flickering erratically. Blue markers, human communication points, remained steady, almost eerily calm. Incoming transmission, her AI assistant announced, analyzing quantum encryption patterns from the Nexus cluster. Morgan's fingers traced the complex data streams. This was more than just information exchange. This was the sound of a galactic power structure beginning to crack. The Zorn weren't the only ones watching. Dozens of subjugated civilizations, species that had lived under Imperial control for generations, were analyzing every detail of the human engagement. Each data point was a potential spark of hope. In the Andromeda Relay Station, a Kreltheric communication specialist named Zora Vex reviewed the transmitted records of the New Phoenix defense. The Kreltheri were a silicon-based species that had been under Zorn control for over 3 centuries. What they saw defied everything they understood about warfare. A planet that could think. Defensive systems that adapted faster than any known technological framework. Weapons that were more like living organisms than machinery. This changes everything, Zora Vex transmitted to her underground resistance network. The message was encrypted through a dozen quantum relay points, each transmission a subtle act of rebellion. Back on Earth, Rachel Morgan continued her analysis. The psychological impact was just as important as the technological demonstration. Humans weren't just showing military capability. They were revealing an entirely new paradigm of technological and strategic thinking. Correlation matrix complete, her AI assistant reported. The holographic display began to show a complex web of reactions. Subjugated species were sending cautious communication probes. Neutral civilizations were recalculating their diplomatic strategies. The Zorn Imperial communication networks were in complete disarray. Morgan pulled up a series of intercepted diplomatic communications. The panic was palpable. Imperial strategists were struggling to comprehend how a species they had considered insignificant could so thoroughly demolish their most advanced battle fleet. One intercepted Zorn strategic analysis caught her attention. It was brutally honest in a way Imperial reports rarely were. The humans represent a fundamental category error in our understanding of technological development. Their systems do not merely respond, they anticipate. They do not simply defend. They transform the very nature of conflict. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just a military victory. This was a complete reimagining of technological potential. Across the galaxy, resistance movements began to stir. The Korlaf tribes, long oppressed by Zorn Imperial forces, started cautiously rebuilding communication networks. The silicon-based Crystalline Confederacy began reviewing their own technological archives, searching for adaptive strategies similar to what humans had demonstrated. Rachel Morgan understood the deeper game. This wasn't about military conquest. This was about demonstrating a different approach to civilization, one based on adaptive intelligence, collaborative potential, and a fundamental rejection of imperial control. Her communication to the United Earth Diplomatic Corps was brief but clear. First contact protocol successfully completed. Galactic perception of humanity transformed. Recommendation: maintain current strategic approach of measured demonstration and open communication. The quantum networks continued to pulse. Somewhere in the vast darkness of space, the balance of power was shifting, and humanity had just become the most interesting species in the galaxy. As the data streams continued to flow, one thing became abundantly clear. nothing would ever be the same again. The Horizon Research Complex wasn't just a laboratory. It was the beating heart of humanity's technological revolution. Dr. Emily Rodriguez stood before a massive holographic display, her fingers dancing across quantum interfaces that seemed to breathe with living intelligence. Around her, the most advanced research teams in human history worked in near telepathic synchronization. Each workstation was a universe of potential, each researcher a conductor in an orchestra of innovation. Quantum Adaptive Matrix is showing unprecedented stability, announced Dr. Marcus Chen, his voice a mixture of excitement and professional restraint. We're looking at a fundamental reimagining of computational architecture. What they were developing was beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Not just a technological advancement, but a complete transformation of what technology could be. The central project, codenamed PROMETEUS, represented humanity's most ambitious technological leap. Adaptive artificial intelligence that didn't just process information, but understood context, predicted outcomes, and evolved in real time. Each computational cycle was a learning experience, each algorithm a living, breathing entity that could reshape itself instantaneously. Rodriguez pulled up a holographic model of their latest breakthrough. What appeared to be a simple computational matrix was actually a complex, three-dimensional representation of adaptive intelligence. Unlike traditional AI, this system didn't just follow programmed instructions. It understood intent. It anticipated needs. It was essentially thinking beyond its original programming. Quantum entanglement communication is showing zero-point energy potential. Chen continued, "We're not just transmitting information. We're fundamentally restructuring how information exists." The implications were staggering. Traditional communication relied on sending discrete packets of data. Humanity was developing a system that could transmit entire contextual experiences instantaneously. Not just information, but understanding. A nearby display showed comparative technological analyses. Zorn Imperial technology, once considered the pinnacle of galactic innovation, now looked like primitive stone tools compared to human advancements. Where the Zorn built rigid, hierarchical technological systems, humans were creating living, adaptive networks. Dr. Rodriguez walked to a containment chamber that housed their most experimental project. Nano-adaptive material that could change its molecular structure in milliseconds. One moment a hard shield, the next a flexible membrane. Then a computational matrix, all without losing structural integrity. The key, she often told her team, is to stop thinking about technology as something we create and start thinking about it as something that grows. Their work wasn't just about military potential. It was about reimagining the fundamental relationship between intelligence, material, and purpose. A notification pinged on the holographic display. Incoming data from the new Phoenix colony's defensive systems. The research team gathered around, watching as the combat recordings were analytically deconstructed. Each defensive maneuver was a lesson, each adaptive response a new avenue of technological exploration. "Look at the quantum resonance patterns," Chen pointed out. The defensive systems didn't just respond to threats. They anticipated them at a subatomic level. The room fell silent. This wasn't just advanced technology. This was a new form of intelligence. Rodriguez understood the deeper philosophical implications. Humanity wasn't just developing better tools. They were creating a new form of existence, a symbiotic relationship between biological intelligence and adaptive computational systems. The quantum communication network hummed with potential. Each breakthrough was a message to the galaxy. Humanity was not just another species. They were a fundamental rewriting of what technological potential could mean. "Prepare the next phase of testing," Rodriguez announced. Her team moved with practiced efficiency, each member understanding they were part of something unprecedented. As the day's research concluded, the Horizon Complex continued to pulse with an energy that was almost alive. Somewhere in its quantum matrices, in its adaptive computational networks, a new form of intelligence was taking shape. and the galaxy had no idea what was coming. Admiral Thomas Johnson stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, humanity's most advanced strategic command vessel. The ship was less a traditional warship and more a mobile computational matrix, a floating intelligence that could analyze, predict, and neutralize threats faster than any known technological system in the galaxy. Zorn Imperial Defense Grid incoming, announced Lieutenant Alexandra Reyes, her fingers dancing across quantum adaptive interfaces. Preliminary analysis shows 17 primary defense clusters and 42 secondary support networks. Johnson's eyes never left the holographic display. Where other military leaders would see a complex defensive structure, he saw a series of interconnected vulnerabilities waiting to be dismantled. "Begin quantum resonance mapping," he ordered. "I want a complete systemic analysis of their communication and defense infrastructures." The Indomitable wasn't just a ship. It was a living, breathing strategic intelligence that could rewrite its own operational parameters milliseconds faster than an enemy could detect a threat. Adaptive nanomaterials shifted across its hull, creating computational patterns that could absorb, redirect, or neutralize incoming weapon systems. Across the galaxy, the human counter-invasion wasn't about destruction. It was about systematic deconstruction. Each Zorn military installation became a canvas for human strategic brilliance. Quantum-entangled communication networks were subtly manipulated. Defense systems were turned into their own worst vulnerabilities. Entire planetary infrastructure networks were transformed from tools of oppression into potential collaborative platforms. Communication disruption protocols at 78% efficiency, Rise reported. Their command structures are becoming increasingly fragmented. The human approach was surgical. Where the Zorn expected massive weapon discharges and planetary bombardments, they encountered something far more terrifying: a complete dismantling of their technological and strategic frameworks. Automated drone swarms moved through Zorn space like liquid intelligence. Each drone was more than a weapon. It was an adaptive computational node that could instantaneously reconfigure its purpose. One moment a communication disruptor, the next a defensive shield generator, then a reconstruction support unit. Admiral Johnson understood the deeper strategy. This wasn't about conquering. This was about demonstrating a fundamentally different approach to conflict resolution. Target their primary communication relays, he instructed, but preserve the underlying infrastructure. We want them to see the potential for collaborative reconstruction. Lieutenant Reyes raised an eyebrow. Most military strategists would have advocated for complete destruction. Johnson was proposing something far more complex, a strategic deconstruction that left the possibility of future cooperation. The Zorn Imperial defense systems began to fail in ways they couldn't comprehend. Quantum adaptive human technologies didn't just overcome their defenses, they reimagined them. Weapon platforms became research stations. Military communication networks transformed into diplomatic channels. Systemic breakdown of Zorn Imperial defense grid now at 92%, Rise announced. There was no excitement in her voice, just clinical precision. Across multiple star systems, human strategic units were conducting a ballet of technological warfare that defied traditional military doctrine. They weren't destroying, they were transforming. Admiral Johnson watched the holographic displays, each movement a carefully calculated strategic dance. The Zorn had built their empire on the concept of overwhelming force. Humanity was showing them the power of adaptive intelligence. Begin reconstruction protocols, Johnson ordered. Let's show them what collaborative technological development really looks like. As the Zorn Imperial systems continued to fragment, something unprecedented began to happen. Their own subjugated colonies, long oppressed, started to see a different potential. Not through violent rebellion, but through technological reimagination. The counter-invasion wasn't just a military operation. It was a statement, a demonstration that humanity represented a fundamentally different approach to galactic interaction. When the final Zorn defense cluster fell, it didn't collapse in flames. It was systematically transformed, its components carefully redistributed into potential collaborative platforms. Admiral Thomas Johnson allowed himself the faintest smile. They had just rewritten the rules of galactic conflict, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Zorn High Council chamber was a monument to 1,000 years of Imperial dominance, intricate biomechanical walls pulsing with centuries of accumulated power. Now those walls seemed to tremble with an emotion the Zorn had almost forgotten. Fear. High Counselor Krelvax sat at the head of the massive circular chamber, his compound eyes reflecting a mixture of desperation and disbelief. The holographic displays surrounding him told a story of complete systemic collapse. 17 generations of Imperial strategy, dismantled in mere weeks by a species they had once considered beneath consideration. The human diplomatic envoy approaches, announced a subordinate, his voice barely concealing a tremor of uncertainty. Diplomatic strategist Daniel Kim walked into the chamber with a calm that bordered on the supernatural. He wasn't accompanied by military escorts or armed guards, just himself, a quantum-adaptive communication tablet, and an absolute certainty that would reshape galactic politics. The contrast was striking. The Zorn High Council, massive, exoskeletal beings who had conquered entire star systems, and Daniel Kim, a human who looked almost fragile in comparison. But those who understood knew that true power wasn't about physical intimidation. Honored counselors, Kim began, his voice translated through quantum communication matrices that captured not just words, but contextual nuance. We are here to discuss the restructuring of your Imperial systems. Not surrender. Restructuring. The subtle linguistic choice was deliberate. This wasn't about humiliation. This was about transformation. Krelvax's translator hummed with a frequency that suggested deep psychological distress. You have destroyed our military infrastructure, dismantled our communication networks. What more could you possibly want? Kim's tablet projected a series of holographic displays. Each one showed not scenes of destruction, but potential. Zorn military installations transformed into research centers. Communication networks redesigned as collaborative platforms. Entire planetary systems reimagined as cooperative development zones. What we want, Kim explained, is to show you a different approach to galactic interaction. The Zorn High Council watched in stunned silence. The humans weren't conquerors. They were architects of a completely new paradigm. Intelligence reports flowed through quantum communication channels. The subjugated species under Zorn control were watching this negotiation with a mixture of hope and anticipation. Every moment was a potential turning point. Your empire is built on a model of control, Kim continued. We're offering a model of collaborative potential. Your technological capabilities, when freed from Imperial constraints, could be transformative. It was a radical proposal. The Zorn had spent millennia believing that control was the only path to stability. Humanity was presenting an entirely different mathematical model of galactic interaction. The holographic displays began to show detailed projections, economic models, technological development scenarios, potential collaborative research initiatives that could revolutionize entire sectors of galactic development. Krelvax's compound eyes flickered, the Zorn equivalent of a human blinking in disbelief. You defeated us, he stated. It wasn't a question. And now you offer collaboration. We defeated a system, Kim corrected, not a species. There's a difference. The negotiation wasn't just about military surrender. It was about reimagining the fundamental principles of galactic civilization. Humanity wasn't just offering an alternative. They were demonstrating a completely new approach to interspecies interaction. As the negotiation continued, something unprecedented happened. The Zorn High Council began to see possibility where they had only seen threat before. The surrender would be recorded in galactic archives, not as a moment of defeat, but as a moment of unprecedented potential. When Daniel Kim finally left the Zorn Council chamber, he carried with him more than diplomatic agreements. He carried the first seeds of a new galactic understanding. The Zorn Imperial era was over. Something entirely new was about to begin. The Galactic Reconstruction Summit convened on the neutral platform of Nexus Station, a massive orbital complex that now symbolized a fundamental shift in interstellar politics. Commander Sarah Williams stood at the central podium, representing humanity, not as a conquering force, but as an architect of possibility. Delegates from over 60 different species filled the massive circular chamber. Crystalline beings that communicated through light patterns, silicon-based life forms that had existed under Zorn oppression for centuries, gaseous entities that moved like living mist. Each represented a civilization on the brink of unprecedented transformation. "We are not here to establish a new empire," Williams began, her voice translated through quantum communication matrices that captured not just words, but contextual nuance and emotional resonance. "We are here to create a collaborative framework that recognizes the unique potential of every species." The holographic displays behind her began to show a comprehensive model of galactic development. It wasn't a hierarchical structure, but a complex, interconnected network where each species could contribute its unique capabilities. The Krelthari delegation, silicon-based beings who had been among the most oppressed under Zorn rule, watched with particular intensity. Their representative, Zara Vex, had been instrumental in providing critical intelligence during the conflict. Now, they were no longer subjects. They were partners. Technological exchange protocols were the first items on the agenda. Humanity wasn't offering its advanced technologies as a gift or a weapon, but as a collaborative platform. Each species would contribute its unique understanding, creating something greater than the sum of its parts. "Our quantum adaptive systems," Williams explained, "are not a product to be traded. They're a framework for mutual development. We're proposing a galactic research consortium where technological breakthroughs are shared, not hoarded." The radical nature of the proposal was not lost on the assembled delegates. For millennia, technological advancement had been a zero-sum game of control and domination. Humanity was proposing something entirely different, a model of collaborative innovation. Behind the scenes, teams of human diplomats, scientists, and strategic analysts worked tirelessly. They weren't just negotiating. They were redesigning the fundamental mathematical models of interspecies interaction. Dr. Emily Rodriguez, who had been instrumental in developing humanity's quantum adaptive technologies, presented a comprehensive research framework. Advanced computational systems would be developed through a multi-species collaborative approach. No single civilization would have complete control. The Zorn delegation, now stripped of their imperial status, watched with a mixture of curiosity and cautious hope. Their technological capabilities, when freed from the constraints of imperial control, represented unprecedented potential. "We are proposing a galactic charter," Williams continued, "that recognizes the fundamental rights of sentient species, not through military enforcement, but through collaborative governance." The proposed charter was revolutionary. It wasn't about creating a new hierarchical system, but about establishing a dynamic, adaptive framework of mutual respect and collaborative potential. Communication networks would be redesigned. Research initiatives would be shared. Economic models would prioritize mutual development over extraction and control. Zara Vex from the Krelthari delegation was the first to speak after Williams. "For centuries, we existed under a system of oppression. This is not just a change of leadership. This is a fundamental reimagining of what civilization can be." The assembled delegates represented species with technological capabilities that varied wildly. Some were barely spacefaring. Others had technologies that bordered on the miraculous. Humanity's proposal was to create a framework that could accommodate and celebrate this diversity. As the summit progressed, something unprecedented began to happen. Species that had been enemies for generations started to see potential in collaboration. Economic models were redesigned. Research initiatives were conceived that would have been impossible under the previous imperial structure. When the first draft of the Galactic Collaborative Charter was presented, it wasn't a document of conquest. It was a blueprint for a new kind of civilization. Commander Sarah Williams understood the deeper significance. This wasn't just about ending a conflict. This was about creating a new model of existence. The galaxy would never be the same.